Market Prospects, delivering timely information and education to prairie farmers for over 30 years. Market Prospects is brought to you by the University of Saskatchewan's Department of Agricultural and Resource Economics and these sponsors. Log on to marketprospects.usask.ca to view past programs and for information on upcoming programs.
Well, it's again time for our Market Prospects interview. This week we focus on the issue of crop rotations. Joining us in studio is Dr. Randy Kutcher, plant pathologist with the University of Saskatchewan Crop Development Centre. Dr. Kutcher, it's great to have you on Farmgate.
Thanks, Bob. It's nice to be here.
Right off the top then, so there are a lot of mixed messages out there about prairie production on crop rotations. Given disease pressures and economics, how long should annual crop rotations be and for what reasons then?
I guess the short answer is the longer the better. But realistically, if you look at field crop diseases, if you're looking at cereals, pulses, and oilseeds, I still like to recommend a 4-year rotation. If you could put some forages in there and lengthen it out even a bit more, it would be great. But it sounds like it's hard for a lot of growers to find profit in some of those crops.
So what are some of the major concerns about crop rotation out there?
Well, there's a lot of really good reasons for crop rotation, not just what I do, plant diseases, but we've got herbicide resistance issues out there and managing your fertility issues and moisture and all kinds of reasons. Maybe even the marketing folks might tell you it's good to have a diverse rotation for markets even. I don't know about that, but I mean, for me, it's really about the disease aspect. So we've got some pretty serious disease issues, especially the last couple of years with fusarium head blight. So rotation is one of the key pillars to manage fusarium head blight. In my past work, I worked on canola, and blackleg is very much the same. It's a residue-borne disease, so to manage it well, you really need a longer rotation, unless we keep coming up with new varieties and new fungicides, which is difficult.
So it's mainly the disease issues you see as the key issue here.
Well, I think if you talk to a weed scientist or an entomologist, they would have their own take on it. But yeah, for me, it's diseases. But certainly it applies to other pests as well. Insects benefit from crops benefit from rotation to manage insects. And, with the herbicide-resistant kochia, for instance, rotation is another tool to manage things like that.
What are the long-term implications of short annual crop rotations at both the individual farm level and for prairie agriculture?
I think it's really hard because we were talking earlier about the tragedy of the commons, where any one thing you and I might do is probably not having a great effect. But when everyone follows the same practices, it's detrimental to all of us. So short rotations, I think, have been profitable for growers, but we're getting a lot of pest issues. So I just mentioned fusarium in wheat. Blackleg in canola. We've got clubroot in the west of the prairies, and in the east we found verticillium, although it sounds like it's widespread. So you have a lot of disease issues that generally become worse with shorter crop rotations or harder to manage, which means more input costs, and you're hoping that those breeders are going to keep pumping out varieties that as fast as the pathogens can break them down. So that's a tall order for breeders and for crop input companies to come up with new products.
Certainly would affect the ag economy in the long term then, I take it.
Well, just imagine if canola, if you only got half the yield you do now, how would that affect farm profitability? I think it would be pretty detrimental, right? So, some folks are saying they have to back off on their canola. I think there was an article last week in the Producer talking about a Manitoba grower who just has to back off canola. It's not as profitable as it used to be.
And the options are difficult too when you're doing crop rotations. You got to follow a set rotation with cereal and oilseed and whatever too, I guess.
I mean, you have some degree of flexibility, but yeah, that's the general idea, is to break up disease and insect cycles by diversifying in terms of the species of crops. So, growing wheat and then maybe barley 2 years later is better, but if you can diversify even more, like a bit of alfalfa for a couple of years or something like that, it really helps to manage many issues, like even the use of pesticides. So you're not relying on the same fungicide over and over, that the next crop hopefully will recommend a different fungicide. So it's good that way to reduce fungicide resistance, right?
Do you have other advice, final words on rotations for prairie farmers at this point then?
Well, I've been using the story about compound interest. I think in any given year, compound interest doesn't look all that attractive. But over years, I think most people know that compound interest is a pretty amazing thing. And I think crop rotation is much the same. That in any given year, it looks like you want to grow the crop that pays the most. But over the long term, you have to consider the agronomics of it and the disease management aspects.
And I guess long term, we could see major changes with crop rotation possibly down the road, do you think, with different crops coming into this?
It sure sounds like it. I mean, I grew up in Manitoba, and you just can't believe when I go back to Manitoba how much soybeans there are now. I think it's 1.5 million acres or something last year. So they're growing soybeans pretty much all over the southern part of the province, which I never thought possible. You know, and corn is the same. It's working its way west as well. So yeah, I think we're going to see quite big changes, and that's probably a good thing for crop rotation.
That would help us break up the disease problems too, maybe.
It will in general, although the one caveat is corn is fusarium head blight also infects corn. That disease might make it a bit tricky, but in general, the more diverse the rotation, the better.
Outstanding information. Thanks very much for coming on Farmgate.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, we'll take a short break again. We're back in 2 minutes. Please stay with us.